Tonight, we're examining a sharply opinionated media discussion that blends political critique, journalistic standards, and concerns about the future of American news institutions. The conversation moves quickly from congressional oversight and interviews involving Donald Trump to broader questions about press accountability and the decline of legacy journalism. What's worth watching closely here isn't just the rhetoric, but what it reveals about power, media norms, and public trust.
We're going to have literally one of the dumbest people in the history of the United States Congress. It's going to interview one of the smartest people in the history of the United States government. It's going to go so poorly for them. And all it's going to do is like kick this thing into the next century even, much less getting rid of it now. And we only got 74 years left to go. I think Comer is congenitally stupid. If you remember, Trey Gowdy, the great fucking intellectual giant, had 11 hours.
A lot smarter than Comer.
Yeah, and he's twice as smart as Comer. And it can come up to ask the same question 3 times for 11 hours. Why do you think it's going to be any better? And what you know, and if you think that President Clinton is not going to be prepared, well, you better have another thought coming. If the Republicans, they just open themselves, they lead with their chin. And boy, does Comer have a big chin, and boy, is it going to get smacked right on the chin. Yes, it is.
Opening ram. You know, I want to make one more point about this. We saw a classic lesson of...
This section highlights an important media dynamic, how journalists respond when interviews become confrontational. The exchange involving CNN's Caitlin Collins reflects a long-standing tension between accountability journalism and political deflection. Historically, experienced interviewers are trained to restate questions when officials pivot or personalize criticism, a technique designed to keep public interest issues centered. Whether viewers agree with the framing or not, this moment illustrates how tone, composure, and repetition shape public perception. It also raises a broader question. When political figures attack the press instead of answering, does that weaken scrutiny or reinforce the journalist's role? How do you interpret that balance?
How a really terrific journalist should stand up to a bully. I don't know CNN's Caitlin Collins. I guess I'm an old-timer because I've never even met her. But I watched that tape. She asked Trump at the White House about the Epstein victims. Instead of answering the question, which he doesn't want to answer, he insulted her. She didn't blanch or change expression. She just asked him again about the victims. The bully got vicious again and once again tried to insult her. Ms. Collins held her ground. She came across as a polished professional, and Trump came away as someone, James, that shockingly has something to hide.
Well, I think what Caitlin did, SEC girl, I might add, gal, I guess a woman, I guess I should say.
Woman, right.
This is, okay, whatever. I mean, talk different out here. This is an example. And so every other journalist that ever interviews him or interviews anybody else, this is the standard. And they're learning that. When she correctly anticipated what he would do and how he would change the subject, and she was just laying there. And this is the new norm. And this is not just Trump, because they won't get him to do any more interviews anywhere. This is like for every Republican lackey that goes on TV, this is what you're going to get. You're going to get smacked right in the mouth. And when you try to dodge, you're going to get smacked in the mouth again. If I were a Republican in Washington, I would stay off of television at all costs. I would subject myself to no interviews because you have no answers.
Yeah, and this guy, of course, can't do it because ego is such. I mean, it was remarkable when someone asked him about the awful story about Savannah Guthrie's mom, who I hope is okay. I hope they find her. Trump immediately personalized it. Well, you know, rather than talk about the tragedy and the hope that the mother will come out, he said, you know, I've gotten along with Savannah Guthrie fine. No, it wasn't about you, but that's who he is. And if you guys out there haven't seen the tape of Caitlin Collins interviewing Donald Trump yesterday, go take a look at it. James, unless you have something else to add to this, I'm going to change to a new subject, if that's okay.
That's fine.
This has been, for my business, this has been a traumatic couple decades. Over 2,000 newspapers have closed. It's really sad for local community reporters who lose jobs when the Pittsburgh paper folds or the Chicago Tribune no longer is a serious newspaper. But there were 3 papers, I really believe, with national significance who made a difference when doing their job who made a difference for our democracy. The New York Times, the leader, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post. The Times and Journal have adapted to serious challenges and are doing great journalism. When Amazon chief Jeff Bezos bought the Post a dozen years ago, he poured resources into it. He said, this is an American institution. It's about values. He supported a great editor and a really, really great staff. Paper even made money for a few years. But the last couple of years, his interest waned and his involvement waned. He has a new young wife and he is enjoying the global glitterati, but even more, he wants to curry favor with Trump. His company lavishly funded the comical documentary on Melania Trump, which I think is starting to really, really flounder. Profits and greed became more important to Bezos than the principles and democratic values that he extolled a decade earlier. The Post was losing money. So does that justify what Bezos did this week, pulling the plug, laying off hundreds of employees, and dismantling a great newspaper? No. He stopped investing. You don't build a newspaper. You don't try to turn something that's a loss into profits by downsizing, by getting rid of people, by firing people. That's been proven time and time again. Look instead what the Journal and Times have done. And he had second-rate people at the head of the business department, which caused more financial drain. But secondly, Bezos is worth over $250 billion. So losing $70 million a year is chump change. Not much more than he spent on his exotic Venice wedding last summer. Jeff Bezos is going to be remembered as a brilliantly successful business entrepreneur, extraordinarily wealthy, who once had values and sacrificed them for greed and closeness to Trump. It really is a disgrace.
Well, first of all, you're right. The guy is the greatest retailer that ever lived, period. Let me just look what they've done. Somebody else might have thought of it. All that talent they had to Post, and it was a lot of talent, it's going to end up somewhere. And somebody is going to come in, and it won't be the Washington Post. I don't know if much you can reconstruct that, but they'll end up somewhere. And if I were that rich, if I had $250 billion and I had one of the $250 billion, and I own one of the really defining assets in modern American history, the Washington Post, I mean, why would I give the goddamn money to the art museum when I could keep this tradition going? But being a guy, it's his money. He can do what he wants. But I'm afraid the Washington Post that we knew, or we hoped we knew, it is no more. And when I particularly remember great fondness, great sports page they had. I mean, they had great political coverage of all kind of legendary journalists that were there. And I look at people, that friends of ours like Walter Pincus, who, whole lifetime was there at the Post. I mean, Dan Baltz, people like that. It's a treasured institution that's, frankly, it's no more. And it's sad to see. It really is.
Oh, I think it's the most tragic day, perhaps, in the history of American journalism, because it really was. It's always sad when papers go under, and there are a lot that are, but the Post was really in a league of its own. I mean, Ben Bradley, who no one who ever met Ben Bradley will forever forget that day. He was just that charismatic, that charming, that good.
I
But
never heard anybody say anything but stellar things about Ben Bradley. I mean, he was a compelling guy, but you know, it's just changed, and people will think of something. And you're right, the Times and the Journal are hanging in there. And, there's other places, and something will come up. Somebody will think of something. At least I hope.
yeah, I mean, there are places to get news, no question of that, James. But for those people who, I mean, that was a central place along with the Times and the Journal, and that's just a loss. They're going to some people who aren't going to be able to make do. And I also say Ben Bradley was maybe the greatest editor of the last 50, 100 years, but they also had Marty Baron did a terrific job at the Washington Post. And for all the problems they're having, the new editor Matt Miller has done a pretty good job with less resources. There was no reason to shutter the Post the way Bezos says.
Well, I mean, but he'd say a lot of things about the Washington Post. I basically lived in Washington from 1986 to 2008. I was on the road campaigns and doing that. Basically, that was it. One of the, in addition to the Sterling Sports page, they had a really good Metro section, and they would cover Virginia politics, which I was involved in, and the Maryland politics, I'm less involved in that. I mean, they would cover it very well. I mean, they had a real complete newspaper. The style section was like one of the great, like, cultural kind of fun sections of a newspaper you can imagine. It's a little bit of my hometown, and I hate to see what happened to the Post, and a lot of people live in metropolitan Washington. Trust me, it's a huge area.
Yeah, and actually starting even before this, but it was the paper of Woodward and Bernstein, and the investigative reporting over the last 50 years has been perhaps exceeded or at least rivaled only by the New York Times and one or two others. And we're going to lose that. That's going to be harder to replicate. And so it's a very, very sad day.
Pentagon coverage have had, Tom Ricks is so long. That woman, Carol Leoning, she broke some of the best stories I've ever seen. But
still doing it, MS Now.
Yeah, things happen, things born, things die.
Taken together, this discussion reflects two intersecting anxieties: the personalization of political media encounters and the erosion of institutional journalism. Commentary on the Washington Post and its ownership under Jeff Bezos speaks to a wider debate about whether legacy newsrooms can survive market pressure without compromising independence. While opinions here are forceful, the underlying issue is structural: how journalism is funded, protected, and trusted in a polarized era. What should matter most? Profitability, influence, or democratic responsibility? Let us know what you think in the comments, and if you value thoughtful, fact-based media analysis, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more informed breakdowns.